بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, and welcome to this, I think it's the 58th episode of Islamic fiqh, and we are about to conclude the things related to distribution of inheritance. And we, I think, lastly stopped at the 5 kinds of heirs that may take a share of 1/2. So if you recall, those who inherit, heirs, either inherit due to a prescribed, specified shares allocated by the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And these are the 2/3, a third, a sixth, a half, a quarter, and an eighth. These are the 6 shares mentioned. And some scholars, when they talk about distribution of inheritance, they find it easier to mention the share and who inherits through that share. So when we come to half, 1/2, who are those who inherit with the half? The compiler, the author says, 5 kinds of heirs may take a share of 1/2. Number 1, the husband. And this is mentioned in the Qur'an. Whenever the wife dies, the husband gets half, providing, and this is a condition, that his deceased wife did not have any children. So it doesn't matter whether he himself has children or not. What counts is the deceased. Did she leave any children behind? The answer is no. Automatically the husband gets half. Number 2, the deceased daughter. Whether a father dies or a mother dies, leaving behind 1 daughter, no other siblings for her, so she automatically gets half. But if there is a brother of hers, in this case, this is a different story. Number 3, the deceased son's daughter, and this is providing there is no one else to block her. And what do we mean by blocking her? See, if the deceased had a daughter or a son, this granddaughter may be blocked totally or may be reduced her share because of the presence of someone above her. Number 4, the deceased full brother, and this is totally wrong, and this is a mistake, probably a typing mistake, and all of you should change it and correct it. Number 4, the deceased full sister, not full brother. A brother does not inherit shares. A brother inherits through virtues of kinship, بالتعصيب. So this is obviously a typo mistake. It should read the deceased full sister. So take out the brother and replace it with the deceased full sister when he has no siblings. That is, when she has no siblings to share with her and the deceased has neither offspring nor parents or grandparents. I hope this is clear. Number 4. Why am I talking as if I'm teaching people who are retards? Something wrong in me. But this is important. You have to change it. So again, I speak slowly. Number 4. The deceased full sister. When you have to change a pronoun from he to she. When she has no siblings to share with, instead of him, put her. And the deceased has neither offspring nor parents or grandparents. Okay, number 5. The deceased half-sister, born to his father when she has no siblings to inherit with her, and the deceased has neither offspring nor parents or grandparents, nor a full brother or a full sister, etc. Number 2. So half, we finished this. Number 2, quarter. So who inherits a quarter of what the deceased had left behind? 2 kinds of heirs may take a share of a quarter. 1, the husband. 2, the wife. End of story. The husband in the beginning took a half because his wife did not have children. But if she has, and she died leaving behind a child or more, then the share of the husband automatically is reduced into a quarter. So this is the quarter we're talking about. What about the wife? The wife either gets a quarter or gets an eighth. The condition: if the deceased husband died leaving no children behind, she gets a quarter. If he had a child or more behind, she gets 1/8. So here we are with the quarter, a husband and a wife. Number 3, heirs who take a share of 1/8. And this applies only to the deceased wife or wives when the husband has offspring to inherit from him. But here is a trick. In Arabic, if a woman has a co-wife, meaning that the husband is married to more than one wife, the other wife is always referred to as darra. And darra is derived from the word harm. Darra yadurru, and ad-dur, harmful or harm as a noun, massani ad-dur. So why do we refer to her as something harmful? Well, she's not something harmful except to the co-wife. How come? Because she deprives her co-wife from having her husband full-time. Now she has him half-time. And not only that, the funny thing is that when her husband dies, both of them share 1/8 if the husband had children. If she was a single wife to her husband, meaning that she had no co-wives, she would have taken the full 1/8. But when the man dies leaving 2 wives, this one gets 1/16, which is half of the 1/8, and this one gets 1/16. Imagine if he had 3 wives, if he had 4 wives, and this goes on and on and on. So the portion reserved for the wife, which is 1/8, let's assume it's $100,000. When there are 2 wives, each take 50. So she looks at her sister and says, if she were not here, I would have taken the full 100. And if there are 3 of them, or let's say 4 wives, then each one takes even a lesser part of the 100. So she takes 25, 25, 25, and 25. This is why they call her Darra, because she shares with her co-wife half or more of the share had she inherited her husband alone. Number 4, who inherits 2/3. So there are 4 kinds of heirs together take a share of 2/3. These are the daughters, the granddaughters, the full sisters, and the half sisters, and these are all women. So the 2/3 are exclusive for women, as the 1/8 is exclusive for the wife or wives. So when does a daughter gets 2/3? Generally speaking, a female, whether she's a daughter, or if there were no daughters, sister or sisters, or before that, granddaughters, etc. If they're one, they take, or she takes half. If they are 2 or more, they share 2/3. So a man dies, leaving behind a mother, a daughter, and 2 sisters. How is this going to be distributed? This is one problem. Write it down. A man dies, leaving behind a mother, a daughter, and 2 sisters. Remember, when you talk about inheritance, do not talk about the relationships to you or to your friend. Talk always about the relationship to the deceased. So we get people say, Sheikh, my father died, leaving behind my mother. This is wrong. You should have said, leaving behind a wife. Because when you talk about yourself, you're going to mix things up. And the Sheikh would not give you a correct answer. Because when you say, leaving behind a mother, then I would think that you're referring to the deceased mother, where she gets either 1/3 or 1/6, as we know. While your mother, who's the deceased wife, gets either 1/4 or 1/8. And because she's your mother, definitely she's gonna get 1/8. So you got things all mixed up and haywiring. Always mention the relationship to the deceased and not to you personally. Now, a man died, leaving a mother, a daughter, and 2 sisters. This is done as follows. The mother gets 1/6 due to the presence of an offspring. The daughter gets half. Half. Yes, because she's 1. And the 2 sisters get the rest due to the virtues of kinship, ta'asib. And this is ta'asib ma'al ghayr, not bil ghayr. And this is, I know, confusing, but okay, it's just for the fun of it, we're mentioning it. Some people have a gift for it, so they immediately understand it. The vast majority of people would say, duh, can we move to the following chapter? So it's always good to investigate and to study these things. So who gets 2/3? 2 sisters, 2 daughters, 2 granddaughters, 2 half sisters, etc. So the first one, the 2 daughters. Okay, Sheikh, what did you give us the example of a man dying, leaving behind a mother, a daughter, and two sisters? I'm just testing you. Because if you were half asleep like I am, definitely you're not gonna understand it. Now reverse this and say a man dies, leaving a mother, two daughters, and one sister. In this case, the mother gets 1/6 because of the presence of offspring. The two daughters get 2/3, and the rest goes to the sister due to the virtue of kinship. Number two, the son's daughters, meaning the granddaughters of the son, because the granddaughters of the daughter, your daughter's children do not inherit you. Your daughter's children do not inherit you. So when do the daughters of my son inherit? When I die, leaving no offspring that can block them. If I died leaving a daughter or a son, they will not get anything. They will be blocked. So let us give an example. A man dies leaving a daughter, 3 daughters of his son, and an uncle. The daughter gets half, the uncle gets the rest, and the 3 daughters of the son are blocked by their aunt, who is the daughter of the deceased, and so on. And a full the deceased full sisters, the same thing with the daughters. If the deceased left no offspring at all and he only left two sisters, then the sisters get 2/3, and then the last third we look for any male relative from his kinship that could inherit. So an uncle, a cousin, immediately they will get the last third. And also, if we have 2 or more half sisters of the deceased, so he died leaving 2 half sisters who share the same father with him, they get 2/3, providing the deceased does not have a brother or half a brother or a real full sister. And this again would be easier if you were to read or go through a book that deals with inheritance and gives you problems to solve. Number 5, who inherits 1/3? 2 kinds of heirs inherit the share of 1/3. 1, deceased mother. 2, half a brother born to the deceased mother. Okay. So the mother, as stated before, either gets 1/6 or gets 1/3. She gets 1/3 when there is no offspring and there are no siblings of the deceased. But whenever there is we're talking about, which one we're talking about? I've dropped one. Did I? Yeah. So we're talking about 1/3. This is number 5. 2 kinds of heirs inherit the share of 1/3. Who are they? The mother, and the mother gets 1/3 when the deceased has no offspring and no group of siblings to inherit from him. What do you mean by group? Because if he had 1, she still gets 1/3. If the deceased had 2 brothers or 2 sisters, then she is reduced from 1/3 to 1/6. So 1/3, the mother of the deceased gets it when there are no offsprings. The deceased had no children at all, and there are no siblings of the deceased as a group, more than 2 and more. But if 1, this is a different story. The second type that gets 1/3 is half brothers born to the deceased mother when the deceased has neither offspring nor parents or grandparents to inherit from him. These are known as ikhwatun li They are half brothers from the mother's side, and they would get 1/3 if the deceased had no offspring, because the offspring by default block the siblings and anyone else. So whenever there is a male offspring, it automatically blocks them all. So there are no offspring nor parents. If the parents are there, then the half siblings are blocked, or grandparents to inherit from him. 6, and this is the last, who inherits a 1/6, 1/6. 7 kinds of heirs take a share of the 6. Number 1, the deceased father, when the father has children. So the father and the mother, whenever the deceased has a child, a son or a daughter, immediately the father and the mother get 1/6 as their specified share. Now the father may, as we mentioned last time, get in addition to the 6th, the rest due to the virtue of kinship, ta'asib. But this is a different issue. We're talking about the fixed share. Who gets 1/6? Number 1, the father, when there are offspring. Number 2, the mother, when there are offspring. Number 3, a grandfather, when the deceased has children but no father. So if I die leaving behind a father and his father, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, is blocked automatically by the presence and by the life of my own father. But if I die leaving no father behind, my father is already dead. So my grandfather, in this case, inherits, and he would inherit 1/6 if I have offsprings. So he takes the position of my father. And number 4, we have the deceased grandmother. So the grandmother is exactly like the mother. If the mother is dead, then the grandmother takes her place. So if I have offspring, a child or more, then my grandmother takes, and my mother is dead, my grandmother takes 1/6. Number 5, the deceased son's daughter, when he has no brother to inherit with her, when she has no brother to inherit with her, and when the deceased has no higher offspring other than an heir who is entitled to share of 1/2. This granddaughter takes a share of 1/6 only when there is another heir inheriting 1/2. Duh. It's very easy. When a man dies leaving behind a female, meaning a daughter, a sister, etc., we've just mentioned that she gets 1/2. If they are more than 1, they are 2 and more, they share 2/3. And this is mentioned in the Qur'an about daughters. Clear? يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين فإن كن نساء فوق 2. If they were women above 2, فلهن ثلثا ما ترك. وإن كانت واحدة, if she was only 1, فلها النصف, she gets only half. So this is crystal clear. 1 gets half, more than 1, they share 2/3. If they were 2, 1/3, 1/3 each. If they were 3, we divide that on 3 shares, the 2/3, and then we give each one, etc. Now, here, the deceased son's daughter, meaning, if I were to die, leaving behind one single daughter, no other offspring, and I have also my late son's daughter who's alive. So I have my daughter and my son's daughter, which is my granddaughter. So by default, my daughter gets half. But because my granddaughter is there and the percentage of daughters still can incubate both of them, they are considered to be my daughters, and they should get 2/3 of my wealth. But then if I give them 2/3 of my wealth, my daughter would be deprived from half to 1/3. So they said, no. Her half remains. And the 2/3 for both of them will be granted. So what's the difference between the 2/3 and the half that this daughter has secured? The answer is 1/6. If you add 1/6 to half, you get 2/3. So the daughter gets half, which is the highest, which is her legal right, and the granddaughter gets 1/6, so that we would complete the 2/3 allocated for more than one daughter or one sister or one female inheriting. And this is used a lot when distributing the inheritance, so that we would compensate for someone who usually would inherit but is blocked by someone, so we compensate it throughout this way according to the Sunnah. Number 6, the deceased half-sister born to his father when she has no brother to inherit with her, but the deceased must have a full sister who takes a share of 1/2. The same thing. The issue of full brother and sister being more privileged than half a brother or half a sister is clear in Islam. A man dies leaving behind one full brother and 5 half sisters and 10 half brothers. This single full brother takes all, and he blocks everyone else, because those were not his full brothers and sisters, they were half. So assuming a man dies leaving one full sister and another sister from his father's side, they all 3 of them share the same family name, the same father, but one is full, father and mother, and the other one is only from his or from her father's side. So in this case, by default, the full sister gets half. What about the half sister? We do the same thing we did in the previous issue. She gets 1/6, so that the total would be 2/3. And finally, number 7, the deceased half brother or half sister born to his mother when a deceased has no offspring to inherit him, b, the deceased has no male ancestors, and c, there is only one half brother or one half sister. Okay, can you explain? Sure. A brother or a sister from your mother's side, so you both don't share the same father's name or the family name. Your mother married a man or 2 or 3 and had children from all, so you have siblings from your mother's side. Now, if a person dies leaving a brother or a sister from his mother's side, a single brother or a single sister, not more, from his mother's side, he or she will get 1/6, providing these three conditions. Number one, that the deceased has no offspring, no boys, no girls. Okay, the deceased died leaving no boys, no girls. Having a wife, this doesn't count. Number two, the deceased has no male ancestors, so no father, no grandfather, no great-great-grandfather. And number three, there is only one half brother, meaning that he's single. But if there were two, this is a different story. If there were 5, if there were 10, see, the half brother from the mother's side either gets 1/6 or he shares with his other half brothers from the mother's side siblings 1/3. And this is what people, this is what we mentioned a little bit earlier in number 5, who inherits 1/3. We said half brothers born to this deceased mother, etc. So I know this is a little bit confusing, but it is something that we have to understand in order to, okay, let me get this thing up and running. I hate this. You do this and you do that. Okay, you have to learn this because, as I said, this is one of the great sciences of Islam that a lot of the Muslims are not aware of. You're not going to be expert by getting through this. I'm not an expert, but definitely you would have so much knowledge if you've understood and listened carefully to what we had studied in the past couple of weeks with today's class. Definitely you would have huge amount of information, more than 95% of the Muslim population when it comes to inheritance. This is without any doubt. So we move on to what is known as Atarsi, and I hope we can finish this because we've gone for so long doing this. I don't know if we're going to have time to take questions or not. Ta'sib means the presence of heirs known as the Asaba, who inherit but have no predetermined shares. If there is only one of them and no heirs with assigned shares, that single heir takes all of the property. If the single Asaba heir is joined by heirs who have assigned shares, he takes what remains after other heirs take their assigned shares. The Prophet ﷺ said, give the assigned shares to the heirs entitled to them, and what remains goes to the closest male. So this is known as Asaba. And the Asaba is divided into 3 types. One, as you see as follows, there are 3 types of Asaba. Al-Asabatu bin Nafs, the person himself is Asaba. 2, Al-Asabatu bil Ghayr. 3, Al-Asabatu ma'al Ghayr. Number 1, the person himself is Asaba, such as the father, such as the son, such as the grandfather if the father is not there, the grandson if the son is not there, the brother, half a brother, the cousin, the uncle, half, whether full or half, etc. All of these are considered asaba by themselves, meaning that if a person dies leaving behind a father and 2 daughters, so the daughters get 2/3 and the rest goes immediately to the father. If a man dies leaving a father only, no one else, he's not married, he doesn't have children, the father takes everything. If a man dies leaving a son, 10 brothers and 5 sisters, the son takes it all. This is Asaba bin Nafs. This is themselves by their own, they are considered to be asaba. Then we have al-asabatu bil-ghayr. So they themselves are, a person becomes asaba because of the presence of another one. So if we have a daughter of a son, a sister who is a full sister, and half a sister. So this is what they can be asaba and more, depending with whom they are with. The third one is the person becomes asaba when joined with another, and this is called al-asaba bil-ghayr, and this is specifically for the sisters with the daughters, when they don't have another male son with them, and we've mentioned this. So when is it that a sister inherits with someone, but when joined with other? A man dies leaving a daughter and a sister. So the daughter gets half, the sister gets the remaining of the 2/3, or she gets the rest because of the asaba. So she gets her 1/6, completing 2/3. The rest, where does it go? It goes to this sister. And we always say that the full sisters give a priority over half sisters. So these are the types of asaba. Asabatun bin nafs, asabatun bil ghayr, asabatun ma'a al ghayr. Again, this is a little bit confusing, but we do need a number of problems to solve it. If this was a designated course in distribution of inheritance, then we have to go through each and every segment and part of it, giving 6 or 7 problems so that you work your mind over it and you know it and understand it. The final part with us is called exclusion. And if you use the word blocking, that would also be fine. Exclusion in Arabic is called, or is the terminology used for it is al-hajbu. And this refers to the prevention of an heir from taking all or part of his or her share because of the presence of another who has a stronger claim. So there are different types of hajb. There is hajbun bil wasf wa hajbun bil shakhs. What is this? Al-hajb by description, meaning that it doesn't matter what relationship a person to the deceased. What matters is the description that this person has. And we had gone through this in the very beginning of talking about inheritance distribution, when we said that there are 3 reasons that would block an individual from inheriting. Reason number 1, slavery. So this is exclusion or blocking by means of description. He's described as a slave, he cannot inherit. And we've explained this earlier and by saying that this person, when he inherits, whatever he possesses belongs to his master. So what's the point? No, he's blocked from inheriting. Number 2, murder. If a murderer kills someone, then he's blocked automatically. So when we say blocked, automatically, this means we treat him as if he did not exist. Give an example. A man was killed. He left behind a wife, a murdering son, and an uncle, meaning that paternal uncle. We know that maternal uncle do not inherit at all. So now we have these three individuals, a wife, and we know that a wife inherits what or what? A wife inherits a quarter if the deceased had no son, and inherits 1/8 if the deceased has an offspring, a son or a daughter. So how much do we give the wife? If you said 1/8, the answer is wrong, because the son is the murderer, and due to his crime he is treated as if he does not exist, and he would inherit nothing. So his mother now, that is the wife of the deceased, is treated as a widow of a man who had no children. So she gets a quarter, and the rest, which is the 3/4, goes directly to the uncle, who inherits through virtue of kinship. And the third type that blocks by description or excludes inheritance through description is difference of religion. A man dies leaving a non-Muslim mother, a non-Muslim wife, and a far paternal cousin. Everything goes to the paternal cousin, everything. And man, if you have a cousin like this, you got it made. Because then all of a sudden they tell you your far cousin who migrated to Argentina 50 years ago and who happened to be a multi-billionaire died leaving a wife, no children, and his Christian mother, and his wife is also Christian, and you're the only one, the only heir. That is good. So these are the three excluded, blocked through description. Now there is another type of exclusion, which is by the person himself. So there's a person that blocks me from inheriting, and these types of exclusion are divided into two types: hajbu hirman, totally depriving a person from inheriting, and hajbu nuqsan. Another one is reduction of his share. So, for example, there are 6 types of people, of heirs, that can never be deprived from inheriting due to someone else blocking them. The parents always inherit. The spouses always inherit, man and wife. And the children, boy and girl, always inherit. Nobody blocks them. Nobody blocks them so that they don't get a penny. No. Of course, unless they were of a different religion, or they were murderers, or they were slaves. And as for an example of how can a person block another person. So let's assume a man dies leaving a son or 2 and 5 grandsons. Now, if the man died leaving no sons at all, his 5 grandsons would inherit everything. True? Yes. But due to the fact that he left 1 son or more behind, this son would automatically block his grandsons. They would not get anything. So this is called hajbu hirman. They're blocked by that individual, that son blocked them from inheriting. Had he not been there, they would have inherited. As for hajbu nuqsan, the reduction, and this is found everywhere. So a man dies, leaving behind a mother, a father, and an uncle or a brother. The mother gets 1/3 because there are no offsprings. The father gets 1/3 because of there are no offsprings, and the rest due to the virtues of kinship. He's a asaba. His uncle or his brother, the deceased uncle or deceased brother, gets nothing. But if a man dies leaving a mother and a father and a son, immediately it is hajbu nuqsan. The mother gets, instead of 1/3, 1/6, and the father gets, instead of 1/3, 1/6, and the rest, the father does not get anything of it. It all goes to the son, because this is hajbu nuqsan, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. And this brings us to the end of today's class about inheritance. We should look at some of the questions that we have. So Faisal says, if I pray witr 3 rak'ahs, then after completion of my 2 rak'ah and I stand up immediately without sitting for tashahhud, when I stand up for the 3rd rak'ah, can I do raf'ul yadayn before starting Surah Al-Fatiha? Now, what is Faisal talking about? Faisal is referring to the position of raising the hands in Salat. We've mentioned this before, that there are 2 positions that happen only once, and there are 2 other positions that happen every single rak'ah. So for every single rak'ah, every time you go for bowing, Allahu Akbar, and you rise from ruku', Sami Allahu liman hamidah, you raise your hands. Every single rak'ah. That's easy. As for the times that happen only once, in the beginning of your salat, inauguration, takbiratul ihram, Allahu Akbar, the first one. This happens only once, because you do it only once in the beginning. The 4th incident or time where you raise your hands is if you're praying 3 rak'ahs or 4 rak'ahs. When you're rising from the first tashahhud. So Fajr, there is no first tashahhud, it's the only tashahhud. It concludes by salam. But in Maghrib, after the first tashahhud, you rise up for the 3rd. After Isha, after the first tashahhud, you rise to complete your 3rd and 4th rak'ah. Here, the sunnah is, after doing your tashahhud, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, you stand up for the 3rd rak'ah saying, Allahu Akbar. So now Faisal is saying, if I pray witr 3 rak'ahs, but it's not like Maghrib because I'm not sitting in the first tashahhud. Witr, I cannot sit in the first tashahhud like Maghrib. I stand up immediately for the 3rd. So do I raise my hands? The answer is no. You do not raise your hands because you're not standing up from a tashahhud. So it is treated like the first rak'ah, like the 3rd rak'ah, etc. The second question is, what happens to the ectopic pregnancy of 6 weeks to 8 weeks? At the time the ultrasound detects a fetal heartbeat. So my question is, will the baby go to Jannah of 6 to 8 weeks, miscarriage? The answer is no, unfortunately, because the child or the fetus is not a human being yet, though there is heartbeat, but the soul has not been breathed in yet. The soul is breathed when the fetus is 120 days old, which means that it is almost 16 or 17 weeks old, 4 months. Before that, this is not a human being yet. And the third question of today: my wife has kids and grandkids. That's not from me. My question is, who are they to me, or what? Who are they to me in relationships? Nothing. They're your step sons and step grandsons. They have no rights to you, and you have no rights towards them. They're not your relations. They're not your kinships. They're not your relatives. They're related to your wife only. And Abdurrahman says, can you list out in order or all the walis, the guardians of a woman, and what is the difference of opinion may be among scholars, that is the son of a woman being a wali or not? The scholars such as Ibn Uthaymeen and others, may Allah have mercy on them, they say that guardianship are in 5. The fathers, the sons, the brothers, the uncles, then the allegiance. So when they say this, the first priority of a woman's guardian is to her father, and if he's not available, then his father, that is the grandfather, and if not, then his father. So this is how it works. And having said that, if the father is there and his father is also there, the grandfather cannot be the guardian while the father himself is present, unless the father authorizes it, and this happens in some families. So whenever someone proposes, out of respect, the father says to his father, "Father, your granddaughter is to be wed tonight. I'd like you to be her guardian and to give the proposal and to approve of the marriage." No problem. But he cannot override his own son. He says, no, my son doesn't know anything. I'm the one who's going to give her to that person, though my son disapproves. The marriage is invalid. So the first thing is the parents, even if they go upwards. If all the parents are dead, the father, the grandfather, the woman doesn't have any male ancestries. In this case, we move to number 2. The sons, even if they go down, the son, the grandson, etc. Is the son given more authority than the brothers, than his uncles? Yes. Yes, Sheikh, but his uncle is 50 years or 60 years of age, and the woman's son is only 16 or 15 years of age. Still, he is her guardian, because this was done by the Prophet ﷺ when he proposed to Salama, and when she accepted, he asked her son Umar to Ibn Abi Salama to be her guardian and to give her to him in marriage. So yes, a son has more authority than a sibling, and a grandson has more authority than a sibling. If she has no sons at all, then it is her brothers, and the full brother gets priority over half a brother. If she has 4 brothers, which one would be her guardian? Is it necessary to be the eldest? No. Any one of them can be her guardian. And specifically if he is the wisest and the best of them in choice. Then we have, if no brothers at all, we have the uncles, the paternal uncles. And if there are not a single paternal uncle available, then the paternal cousins, and the further it goes from her paternal side. And I think we will take this last question. Abdul Hakeem says, please, about what to recite after Surah Al-Fatiha in Salah. Can someone have it in mind that I'm going to read this surah, or what just come to mind at that time? People think that before I begin Salat, I have to decide what I'm going to read in the first rak'ah and what am I going to read in the second rak'ah. Meaning, I'm going to pray Maghrib. So before actually beginning my Salat, I have to say, okay, in the first rak'ah, I'm going to read Surah Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq. In the second rak'ah, I'm going to read Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Nas. So then I start my prayer. And for one reason or the other, I forgot what I had decided. People are confused, say I have to perform Sujood al-Sahu. No, I have to repeat my prayer. All of this is bogus. All of this is not true. Whether you recite a predetermined surah, or you just simply do like all of us do, say Allahu Akbar, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Okay, what should I recite? لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه. I just picked it up. No problem. You don't have to decide. And even if you decided, you can change that anytime you like, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So this is all the time we have until we meet next, let's assume Thursday. I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.